to start with this. So this is a Louis Vuitton purse. And I called my girlfriend. It's not mine. I called my girlfriend and I said, hey, I need to borrow your purse. And she said, all right. And there was a few rules that she gave me. I already have not followed them. I took the dust bag off of it because it was too much for me. So I already did not follow that rule. But the purpose of this is, any of you know the value of this purse? Does anybody know how much, if you went to a Louis Vuitton store, about how much? $1,500. So, okay, wait, who said what? Holy moly, yep, you're on it. You are, he knows. $3,000. Yes, so it is a pochette métis. Did I say that right? Dan was trying to coach me on that. Its retail price is $2,840. Okay? $2,840. Anybody want to buy it? No? We could do it with Monopoly money? No? No, she'll be calling me right now saying, wait a minute, what are you doing? Okay, so the value of this purse is approximately $3,000. Well done, Jim. So it's not just an ordinary purse, right? Although it is, well, anyways, we don't need to go into that. So you're probably wondering why I'm talking about that, and we'll figure that out later. So I want to talk today. Did you get the verses, Roland? No. Yes, you did. Okay. So I want to talk today about the story or the parable of the prodigal son. And I'm going to kind of set the stage. So it is in Luke 15, and there are 3 stories that Jesus tells. And he tells these stories in response to the Pharisees. The Pharisees had been watching Jesus, and they were disgusted, basically, with his behavior. He was hanging out with the sinners. He was hanging out with tax collectors. He was hanging out with the lowest of lows, okay? I want you to remember, and I think we kind of forget this sometimes, Jesus must have been pretty freaking cool. He must have been an amazing human being because people wanted to be around him. They wanted to come, they wanted to hang out with him. And people that everybody else in the religious community were judging, they wanted to go and be with him. They felt safe with him. So whether it was children or whether it was the dirty tax collectors of the day, whether it was a prostitute, whether it was a leper, whoever they were, the ones who should have felt like they needed to hide were the very ones who wanted to sit at the table with Jesus. Okay, just let that sink in. He must have been fun. I imagine he told jokes. I imagine he had people at the table laughing, served good food. Like this was a human being that everybody looked for, wanted to be around. It wasn't just the words that he said. It wasn't just that he was our savior. They didn't recognize, they weren't seeing that yet. They were just seeing a really good human, and they hadn't seen that in the religious community. That wasn't the norm. So he told 3 stories to the Pharisees in response to them saying, who the heck do you think you are? Why are you doing this? And those 3 stories, I'm just going to tell you what they are, and then we're going to go into the parable of the prodigal son. So there was the lost sheep, the lost coin, and then the lost son or the prodigal son. Okay? So the people of reputation, the infamous tax collectors, as well as your regular sinners, were in the habit of crowding Jesus. They were magnetically drawn to him, addicted to his conversation. This is the Mirror translation, so I like to use this one just because I think it breaks it down really well. But the Pharisees and the law professors were furiously complaining about the warm hospitality with which Jesus embraced these people in their frequent banquets. He gathered around food, and he had fun, and he loved the people well. So let's go to the prodigal son story. This is Luke 15, 11 to 24. Are we going to put it up or not? I'm going to read through. Okay, there we go. And I am reading again from a different translation. Am I? Is this one? Okay, so it may not be exactly. So then he continued, and a certain man had 2 sons. The youngest approached his father and said, "Father, give me my share of our inheritance." So the father gave him his life. Within a few days, the young man had gathered all his belongings and left to a foreign country far away from home. There was nothing holding him back now, and he soon squandered his inheritance, living it up without any restraint. By now, he exhausted his resources, and to make matters worse, a severe famine gripped that land. He began to be in dire need. So he journeyed further into the country and attached himself to a local citizen who sent him into his fields to shepherd his pigs. He was so desperately hungry that he was even craving to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were feeding on, but no one would allow him to. At this point, he came to his senses. I'm going to come back to that statement, but just remember that. At this point, he came to his senses. Thinking out loud, he said, "My father has many hirelings working for him, and everyone has more than enough to eat. And here I am, dying of hunger." Now, I want you to picture something, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel when I was reading through it, I was like, oh my gosh, this boy growing up in this home, very likely, as he was growing up, would sneak into the kitchen where the hired servants were and sit at the table and eat bread with them. He found community, I am sure, in that kitchen. I think that he understood that at the very minimum, when I go home, I'm going to find community, even if it is just sitting at the table with the servants. So there was this feeling of wanting community again. There was a feeling of wanting to come home, even if it didn't look like this lavish lifestyle of sitting at the table with his dad and all the fancy foods and the whatever. He wanted that community. It wasn't just hunger, I don't think. I don't think it was just wanting to eat something. I think he wanted to feel community again. Because if you remember in the beginning of the story, or the start of it, he was looking for community by going out and hanging out with people and partying, right? So this is what he wanted. He wanted to go somewhere where he would be loved and celebrated, even if it was sitting in the servant's kitchen. So the word erkamai in the Greek, I think it's in the Greek, the original, means to come. And aihoten, I'm sure that's totally butchered, is to oneself. So to come to one's senses, or to return to himself, or return to his original design. The prodigal son was laying there in the pigsty, starving, and he came to himself and he said, "This isn't who I am. This isn't where I belong. I want to go home." And he returned to his senses. He returned to his original who he was. So this is where he then decides, okay, I'm going to go. So he got up early. He got ready to go. He began to rehearse what he would do. He said to himself, I'm going to travel home. I'm going to face my father. And I'm going to tell him that I've sinned against heaven and before him. And you can imagine there's this whole grandiose apology that he is planning and preparing. I will convince him that I am no longer worthy to be called his son, and beg him to employ me as one of his hired servants. And with that, he felt confident, and he got back up, and he began to return to the journey to his father. He was yet a long way from home when his father saw him, and filled with compassion ran to his son, flung his arms around his neck, and kissed him fondly. When the son caught his breath, he began his rehearsed sinner's prayer. "Father, I have sinned before heaven and in your face. I am not worthy to be your son." And in the translation I'm reading, it says he began his rehearsed sinner's prayer. And at the end, "I am not worthy to be your son." And then it says ... And we know what the ... means, right? It means he didn't get to finish. There was more. But his dad cut him off. His father wasn't paying attention to this and didn't give him a chance to finish his rehearsed plea. He merely instructed his slaves to immediately bring out the best robe and to clothe him in it, and give him a ring to put on his finger and shoes for his feet. And then, it's very cool, in full anticipation for his son's return, he now also had grain-fattened calf brought and slaughtered. He was already ready for this. It was party time. So, with our minds flooded with joy, let the merry celebrations begin. This is the reason for our joy. My son is here, was dead, and he was revived. He seemed to be lost forever, but he is found. And so they began their merry celebrations. There's more to this story, but I think we always focus on the more to the story. So I'm gonna stop here, and I'm gonna kind of break this down a little bit from some of the thoughts that I've been having. So, how many of y'all have had what you would call a prodigal moment, a coming home moment, a coming to yourself moment, right? Yes. How many feel like you've had multiple prodigal son moments, come to yourself moments, right? Okay. So, oftentimes in that case, when we have these come to ourselves moments where we're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to live like this, this is not who I am, it's whatever, we then search and look for somebody who we find, who we would say is like a father figure, or somebody who has godly wisdom, or somebody who is wise, and they appear to really love God. It could be a preacher, it could be your mom, it could be a grandma, it could be a friend, but it's somebody who you hold in high esteem and believe that they are so very close to God. Like, they get it, right? So you're going to that person and you are believing that that person, right, is going to help you get on the right track. They're going to affirm you. They're going to help you move forward. So we go back to church. We start to talk to we put ourselves in a community where we feel like, yes, this is going to get me right back on the right track. And they begin the process, whoever that person is, to place the robe of righteousness, like the father did for the prodigal son. They begin the process of placing that robe on your shoulders. I grew up in a Christian home. My parents are amazing. It was amazing. I had a really great childhood. And like many, there's always some sort of dysfunction, but I had a really great childhood. And I can remember way back, I would be super young, and I would be walking home from school. And we lived in a really super small town, like very small town. And I would be walking home from school, and it would be dark because I lived in Canada, and it was dark by 5 in the wintertime. And I would have done some sort of sports event, and I would be walking home from school. And I would be weeping. I was by myself, and I would be weeping. And for some reason, I just always felt like, where is God? Like, where are you? Do you love me? Is there something between me and you? Is there something a reason why you can't hear me? Is there something wrong with me? And so for whatever reason in the religion or the faith that I was raised, that was something that something could divide me from him. Something could separate me from him. And there was this constant fear. I lived in that fear all of my childhood and turned in and became a teen, and going to a small school until the 8th grade. So there was 8th grade, yeah. So there was 7 of us in my 8th grade class. And I was getting ready to go into the big city, Nipawin, Manitoba. And the classes were 20 kids, 20 students. And I was scared because I was an outgoing, I loved life, I was loud, I talked a lot. I thought I was funny and was not shy in the least. But I was scared because I didn't know if I was going to be able to be good enough. I didn't know if I felt like I was going to fail. I felt like I wasn't going to make right decisions. I thought I might be just too weak. So I asked my parents, I said, would you be willing to send me away to school? So I went to a private school. So they sent me away, and I went to a private school, a Christian private school. And this was what I would have called one of my prodigal moments where I realized, hey, I came to myself. And I was like, I need to go somewhere where somebody can put this robe of righteousness or teach me who I am or whatever that process was. So I went to this Christian school, and at one point in the process, I sat down with a doctor, I guess you would call him a doctor, and I did a temperament analysis. And it was very personal, asked a lot of questions. I felt like I needed somebody to speak into my life. I needed some wisdom, very personal. He asked me a lot of questions. He did the whole, have any of you guys done a personality test? Yeah. So he asked me a lot of questions. It was a whole process. It was a long process. And then I received this, and it was my analysis. It was personal to me. I am, I'm just finding my way back there, a sanguine melancholy. Does anybody know what a sanguine melancholy is? So I'm a sanguine with a melancholy as my secondary temperament. And it means that I'm warm, I'm outgoing, I'm a friendly person, I have charisma, I run off in several directions at once. And then my melancholy side is I'm perfectionist prone, I'm gifted. Let's focus, I'm gifted. I'm an aesthetic person with a sensitive and conscientious nature who's moody and critical. An often ungrateful spirit is described, and often ungrateful spirit. Anyways, so I get this test back. Okay, it looks like this, single-spaced, full to the brim. I kept it. I don't know why I kept it, maybe just for this moment, but I kept it. So this personality test has 2 pages of good about me, about my personality, about who I am, not just my personality type, like me personally. Has 2 pages, and half of those 2 pages is just what job they suggest that I get when I grow up. Okay, and the other 11 pages that are single typed are all of the things wrong with me and my personality, including headlines like this: I lack discipline, restless and unproductive, late and undependable, this morning was not my fault, careless, not considerate of other people, poor planner, also this morning was not my fault, subject to sensual temptation. 2 pages were spent on this one. Okay? Angry and explosive, opinionated and sarcastic, loud and egocentric. I'm a truth bender, aka a big fat liar, and I had a seared conscience. Okay? And under the sensual temptation, oh my Lord, the religious community has such an obsession with sexuality and all of that. So this was a major thing for him. So make sure, these were my steps. Make sure I avoid any statement or action that can be interpreted by men as flirtatious. Be careful who I touch, and avoid suggestive books, etc. Okay? So I read it, and this became like my Bible. But it also was the thing that began to shape who I saw myself as. Okay? I was 17 years old. I was not promiscuous. I did not have a history of any sort of stuff. That wasn't and isn't and all of that who I was. And I'm going to pause here and I'm going to say, so that statement for me was one of the most powerful ones, and one of the ones that did most of the crappy work in my life. in who I saw myself as. And it is me sharing even that part is very scary, because there can be people who, because I was so scared of what people thought of me, and I still am scared of what people think of me. And so it is, when you share some of those, I'll get to this, but when you share some of the cloaks that were put on you, they will be scary, because you might feel like somebody's going to say, yeah, that is who you are. I can see that. That is, I get that. Yeah, I can see that totally. And I did, Dan and I had a whole huge conversation about that. How am I doing, babe? Am I doing, babe? Yeah, you really couldn't say anything else, could you? Thank you. But because I was raised in the purity movement, and the doctor said I am seen by others as a flirt, and just because I was so outgoing and talked to everyone, these 2 pages began to consume me. They were heavy, and I carried them through life like a champ. And then it seemed like everything else began to feed into it. So we would have special speakers come into the school, and he would talk about a Jezebel who tried to seduce him because she was talking to him at the table with her husband, and she wouldn't shut up. And so then she was this evil person, and she was trying to seduce him. And it seems like when you get some of these statements or comments in your life, things just start to come to prove that they are true. And that's kind of what happened to me. And this was a spiritual giant to me. And so I took his stuff as, okay, this is who I am. And I'm curious, does anybody in this room think that a 17-year-old girl, that was the right thing for them? That was the right cloak to put on that 17-year-old girl? And I know that probably many of you have had situations like that, right? So let's go back to this purse. Okay? This purse is a 5A knockoff. It's a counterfeit. So what 5A means is that it is leather, it smells like, it looks like. I could take this into a Louis Vuitton store. They probably couldn't tell the difference. If somebody had a real Louis Vuitton, I could sit it down beside it, and they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's a 5A knockoff. They use, I think, the same stamps that they use in Louis Vuitton. It cost me $300, okay? So if any of y'all had decided to buy it, I would have made a really lot of money. So it's a counterfeit. That's it. It's just a counterfeit. It's a 5A counterfeit. And modern Christianity has perfected the art of making 5A robes of righteousness, and have even learned how to mass produce them. They feel like, they smell like, they look like the real deal, and they are counterfeit. And the problem with them is that they backdoor. There was so much in here that was good and true and kind of was like yes, that it's a Trojan horse. You bring it through the door and you're like, yes, okay, yes, this is true about me, this is true. And there was enough of that in there that it got into my mind and my heart, and then it just, all hell broke loose. And then began this messy life of trying to be something, of trying to fit in, of trying to be enough. That was a big one for me, being enough. Some of us today are still wearing counterfeit ones. We don't even know it. We're still wearing counterfeit robes of righteousness. And you might remember the moment that was put on you. And you were anticipating the feeling of being celebrated. You were anticipating the feeling of, hey, I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm coming back to myself. This is who I am. And you walk in and you walk up to that person and you start your story, and instead of stopping you They want to hear your whole story. They want you to rehearse it. And you remember that moment of standing in front of somebody and sharing your story and feeling like, oh, okay, they're going to tell me it's all going to be okay, and they're going to help me. And then they put the robe of righteousness on you. And for some reason, for a moment, it feels like, okay, this is okay. And then it starts to feel really heavy. And you start to question, and you're like, wait a minute, I feel like I should be celebrating. I feel like there should be some joy. And there's not. There's this heaviness. There's the late sleepless nights of going, oh my gosh, who am I? Am I enough? Does God love me? Am I ever going to be enough? Am I ever going to make it? So what does it look like? So some of you might be going, well, I don't know. Do I have the robe of righteousness? The all hell breaking loose can look like some of these things. So just so you know, you might be wearing a counterfeit robe if you are sin conscious instead of identity conscious. If you're legalistic, rules are more important to you than relationship and human experience. You have a low self-esteem. And that can look a lot of different ways, but a low self-esteem, you doubt yourself. Instead of feeling like you are part of a royal priesthood. You don't trust yourself. I didn't trust my voice. I didn't trust the things that I did. I didn't trust, I'll go back specifically to that one thing. I would go to events and parties, and I would come home and I would rehearse the whole entire night. And I would question, did I talk too much? Did I say the wrong things? Did I touch somebody's arm while I was talking to them? Did I wear the right outfit? Did I cause somebody to stumble? I stopped trusting my voice. I stopped trusting my inner knowing. And the thing about it is, and we are taught this, and then we're also taught that we have a very wicked, wicked heart. But the thing is that heart's been exchanged, and also our minds have been exchanged. We have the mind of Christ. We have to learn to trust our voice, our inner voice. We have to learn to do it. Unhealthy comparisons to others versus living in the freedom to embrace and celebrate different. A hostility to the message of grace. If it just kind of irks you, this grace message, like there's something missing. There's got to be something more to this. Frequent altar visits. Always feeling in debt to God and scared you aren't enough. Being the little girl who was walking home from school and crying out to God saying, please tell me what I need to do for you to be okay with me, because I just want you to love me. You can't rest in your connection with God. You can't join in the party when other prodigals return home. You just can't. You're like, no, they've got a price they need to pay. You're asked to rehearse the gory details of your riotous living over and over versus let's talk about sonship or daughtership or childship and so on. Here's some language you might hear. We love you, but we hate your sin. God would answer your prayers if you just. You aren't qualified to ask that question. You are causing other people to stumble. You can never be too sure that you have your place in heaven secured. God forgives you, but. Or you, okay, I'm not going to say that one, and so on. Okay? So, all of this, so I worked with children for many, many years, and my goal and my desire always when I was working with those kids was not to see them the way that somebody else might see them when they walk in the room. Crazy, out of control, disobedient, liars, all of those things. My goal was always to figure out a way to see through all of that. And the things that I would tell my staff was, I desire for us to have the eyes to see through the grave clothes and to see the child. And the grave clothes to me were the things that life, religion, people that they, circumstances, the way that they, the circumstances that they were born into, all of those things if we could see through that, because oftentimes that is what can cause that craziness, but it's the grave clothes, it's the stuff that people put on us throughout our lives. And I wanted us to live out our ministry in such a way that we were able to see through that, and we spoke only to that. That was all that we spoke to, was who that child is. And my desire was to see them return to themselves. So in Lazarus, so it made me think of Lazarus. So Lazarus was in the tomb. He's dead, very dead. He was very, very dead. They had wrapped him up. They had put him in the grave clothes. He was dead, not breathing. Jesus shows up on the scene, and he's like, I'm gonna fix this. He's just sleeping, basically. He's just sleeping. And so he said, I'm just gonna read it. When he said these things, so he had already addressed the crowd, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The man who had died came out. His hands and feet were bound by linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Or in another translation it says, "Unwrap him so that he can move around freely." So the Greek word for come forth is similar to the word used in the Prodigal Son, is coming back to yourself. Both wanting to move someone from death to life by returning to their original design. I love that line, unwrap him so that he can move around freely. Our charge and our mission here at the church is we begin to see people through that, and then when they come back to themselves, when they come back to themselves, and let me be very, very clear, we do not define what somebody is going to look like when they come back to themselves. We have no right to say, this is who you need to be. If you are in a place where you have to look like everybody else in the room, you have to fit into a box, then you are in a place that is placing counterfeit robes of righteousness on your shoulders. The goal of this community is that when you come back to your true, authentic self, who you know God created you to be, you know, and only you can know, when you come back to that you are celebrated, that there is a party, that there is joy, that there is a acceptance and a belonging that you are going to feel. And I want us to collectively as a group to help remove some of those grave clothes, because some of us don't know that we're wearing counterfeit robes of righteousness. But we can hear it, but other people can hear it in our language. So I want us to become experts at hearing that, and then beginning the process of answering that command that Jesus gave, remove those so they can move about freely. And then, almost most importantly, is we never, ever take out a 5A counterfeit robe and put it on anybody's shoulders. And that is something that, if you grew up in a religious community, is very, very hard, because you think it's supposed to look like something, and you think like, if you do this, this, and this, or if you stop doing this, this, and this, then you'll be better, or everything will be okay, or God will love you more, or you'll be accepted, or you'll be able to play on the worship team or do something. There are certain things that we grew up with in the training and the understanding and the interpretation that we grew up with that we use certain terms, and it is putting on a counterfeit robe, and it is too heavy. The Bible talks about the burden is too heavy for them to bear. And we can't do it anymore. I am 50 years old, and I am still working through the process of healing through some of the counterfeit robes that were placed on my shoulders through the years. And I know that there are many of you who have worn those heavy robes as well. So I feel like today, this is going to be I'm just going to close out with this. If everybody can stand, let's just have everybody stand. I just think if there is one thing that I can do because I'm so passionate about it, and this platform is the perfect place for me to do it, I want to say to each and every one of you, I do not know your story. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what people have said to you. I do not know what religion has said to you. I do not know who the wise father was in your life who spoke something into your life. But I know that God is kind, and you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And when he sees you, he sees something beautiful. You are like a poem that he wrote. You are a piece of art. You are something that you are unrepeatable. Like you are the only one of you that is there. And he created you for a purpose. And you are also one of the facets of his face, one of the facets of who he is. And he wants you to find your way back to who you are. He wants that. And it's not going to look like if there is a voice in your head that thinks that it looks like a specific thing and it sounds religious, just shut it up for a minute. Just shut it up for a minute. And then trust the voice that's here. And listen to who you truly are. And at the very base of that is you are good, and you are lovely, and you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And there is nothing between you and him. And when he sees you, he sees Jesus, basically. So if everybody can just close their eyes, and I just want you to take a minute and think about whether there is a counterfeit robe on your shoulders. And I want to declare today that is being removed. It's gone. It's done. Take off the weight. There is zero value in wearing that counterfeit robe. It will not keep you in line. It will not make you live more Christ-like or look like Jesus more. It actually is bringing you death. And many of us are like walking dead. And I want you to throw that off. And as a community, I want us all to just imagine ourselves helping the ones around us to remove those grave clothes so that they can walk about freely in the design of who they truly are and who they were truly created to be. And then I want to place on you, which isn't really mine to place because he's already done it, the robe of righteousness. And that is a gift. And it's already there. And he wants you to feel it. It's light. It's not heavy. It's full of joy and celebration and peace. And it enables you to walk through circumstances in your life being true to who you are. Father, I thank you that you are so, so good. And I thank you that you have already prepared the fatted calf for this celebration. And I thank you that you have interrupted our mental acrobats and confessions and prayers and said, enough. Enough. I know who you are. This is who you are. And you put that robe on our shoulders and that ring on our finger and the shoes on our feet, and we begin to party. I thank you that you are so, so good, and that your love is so vast, so deep, so wide, so all-encompassing that we cannot even begin to grasp. And in that love, you created a bunch of these amazing human beings to showcase that love. And I pray that we will get the religious junk out of the way so that we can walk about freely, extending and showing and allowing people to feel and see the goodness and the love of God through our lives lived authentically. And I pray that we will also be the ones who see those around us who are trying to live up to a standard that was never yours. And we would help them gracefully in love and kindness remove those grave clothes so they too can walk about freely and experience and showcase the love and the goodness and the kindness of our Father, who was standing there every morning waiting for us to remember who we are and to come home to the wide open arms. And I want to say, for fathers in here, I want to say that you may have experienced some of that stuff put on you. And I want to charge you to stop it now, to decide that you will not put that on your kids, that you will not put that expectation or those religious ideas, not put them on the next generation. Stop it here. And in that process, begin your healing and begin to show them how to walking in their authentic selves. So, today, I pray that we will feel like there is a party in heaven because He loves who He created, and He loves that we found ourselves. That's it. That's all I got. Amen. Yeah. So thank you so much. 11:38. Oh, sorry. But have a great day and party.
Love you guys. We'll see you next week. Bless you.